Hi everyone, this is Ed Gutowski, and what I wanted to do was to create a video where we have really one student learning objective, and that is to help you understand the difference between what is naturalism and what is realism. So that is the goal of this video. So one of the things that we have to think about when we think about natural and realism is I always like to reference John Muir, right? John Muir is the one who really founded Yosemite National Park. And here's that classic iconic picture of John Muir next to Teddy Roosevelt as they're looking over Yosemite Valley. And I love the quote by John Muir that says, "Climb the mountains and get in their good tidings." But what we have to do is we have to kind of understand how both John Muir and Teddy Roosevelt really helped us to establish the ideas of naturalism and realism. So let's take a look at these two terms. So we want to talk about what is naturalism, because natural and realism are two terms that are very, very similar. In fact, it's oftentimes hard time for scholars to understand the difference between these two terms. But what in essence both of them want to do is they both want to create an accurate, realistic picture of life and nature. So then we come to what is naturalism to help us understand naturalism. And naturalism wants to show life in an accurate and authentic way. It wants to give, again, a more realistic image of nature and life. Naturalism does not want to romanticize nature or life in any sort of way. So oftentimes when you see something as an example of naturalism, it can show nature, it's harsh, it can show its true conditions, and we're not trying to romanticize nature. And naturalism, again, it wants to look at nature as realistic as possible, but it also oftentimes wants to look at life from a biological or scientific point of view, right? So it's going to look at life much more through a scientific lens as well. So then that leads the question, what is realism? Now remember, realism also wants to depict life realistically as possible, to give a realistic image of life. However, realism wants to show the world and life as it really is. Again, it's not trying to romanticize life. It wants to describe people and society and nature as accurately as possible. And oftentimes, realism will focus much more on the middle and the working class. So I want you, again, if we take a look at this picture of Half Dome in Yosemite, notice if I was a romantic, I would say things like, "This is the most beautiful picture ever. Look at the snow on the trees. I'm so fired up. I want to climb Half Dome." However, if we were to look at it as a naturalist point of view, we would want to just look at it and describe it in the most realistic picture. We might say things like, "This is a picture of Half Dome. Notice the snow on the top of the mountains. Notice the rough rocks. Notice the trees, which don't have much snow on them. It could be a symbol of spring is arriving. They look like pine trees," right? But I'm describing nature in a much more realistic fashion as well. So and so notice if I were to use this as an example of naturalism or realism, again, if I were to describe it as naturalism, I'd say, hey, here's a picture of a man that has climbed up to the top of Yosemite Falls. There's a waterfall that is running, right? It looks like the rocks are a little bit wet, right? That would be naturalism. If I were to say realism, I might say, there's a man looking from the working class. He's got boots, jeans on. He's protecting himself, possibly from the cold water that's coming from the water itself, right? But there's two ways we can interpret this, as naturalism or as realism. And what I really hoped is that, so I want you to look at this picture and also think again how it might be an example of naturalism or realism. But in the end, I just wanted to create a short video that kind of helps you understand the basic concepts of naturalism and realism.